الله‌ها در سالهای حدود 1972 جناب اولینگا به تهران تشریف آوردند.
In the early 1970s, Honorable Olinga visited Iran, the birthplace of Baha'u'llah. It was in Tehran. I was about 16 years old and remember vividly the gathering was like a fountain of people flowing around him to the point that there was no room for a pin to drop. His talks were close to our hearts and unforgettable because he foretold of future events that we have now seen with our own eyes.
به خاطر میارم که
I remember wherever he traveled, there were many friends circling around him, and by saying Allah Abha and greetings, would express their utmost joy.
After Hand of the Cause of God Enoch Olinga's visit to Iran, the friends in Europe in 1970 had the joy of seeing him and Elizabeth at the House of Worship. In Germany, where he said a prayer in his native language.
The Baha'is of Canada and the United States were deeply blessed by the visit of Hand of the Cause Enoch Olinga, from the east to the west coast, to the deep south, and finally north to the Mother Temple of the West.
I grew up in a very segregated southern community. I didn't go to school with anyone of color. Not even high school or college. So my experience was very limited. But when I met Enoch Olinga, he opened up a new world to me of what color did or didn't mean, what spirit meant, what love meant. He was such a beautiful example of what I think God was talking about when he said, I made man in my own image. He embodied to me what spirituality was. His loving, gentle, intellectual abilities radiated to everyone. He was very impressive. I think the South now still vibrates from what he had to say and what his presence did to that community. There are a lot of Baha'is there who are still very active and have very vivid memories of his visit.
I knew that he was a tribal person and that I'm a tribal person, and I knew that he would know things that could benefit me knowing. I wanted a validation of our traditional religious beliefs, that they were from the Creator, that they were in truth. I said, we believe that there have been several manifestations of God who have appeared here in the Americas to our ancestors, and he smiled. He said, yes, that's true. He said, but a lot of people don't understand. He says there have been more than 20,000 of these manifestations of God. And I just looked at him and I was like, and he was off, looking kind of like he was seeing something in another world, and he was just relating this to me. And then he came back and he looked at me and he smiled, and he just leaned forward like that, and he put his forehead against my forehead, and we just stood there for a long time. I mean, it could have been an eternity. It was really a long time. And he just looked at me and he said, he said, we'll meet again.
It's always been of particular interest to me how Enoch Olinga and Louis Gregory related to each other in terms of their station and their missions in life. The founder of the Baha'i faith, Baha'u'llah, in his teachings uses as one of the cornerstones of his revelation the equality of all human beings. In the United States in particular, where racism had actually become institutionalized, the Baha'is have always felt that the elimination of prejudices and the equality of the races had to be one of the first areas that we concentrated on in teaching the Baha'i faith. And to that end, one of the most significant examples was Abdu'l-Baha, the son of Baha'u'llah, the founder of the Baha'i faith, had a particular mission for Louis Gregory in developing certain aspects of the teachings of Baha'u'llah to the Western world, particularly the early American community. And of course, as we know, Louis Gregory, after his passing, his spiritual station was elevated to that of Hand of the Cause of God, which is a very significant and honored station to hold. As I grew up in the faith, and as time went on, and the guardian, Shoghi Effendi, became the head of the faith and began to appoint other hands of the cause, these particular souls who were his right and left hand, as it were. During that early period of his administration, opening up the whole continent of Africa to the faith. And there arose amongst the early believers in Africa a young man, a very humble background, whose name was Enoch Olinga. And a man who became so inspired, so committed to the principles of the Baha'i faith and the spirit of his own development with God, became such a giant in the teaching field in Africa that Shoghi Effendi gave him the rank of Hand of the Cause of God.
On my first trip to the House of Worship from Florida, I met Enoch Olinga. He was such a powerful man. And even though he didn't speak to me directly, what he said was to all the people who live close to the land and who are of color: be strong, be real, and keep up your hope. Pray daily. Pray, 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 and your answers will come through prayer.